A little boy of 13 is on his way to school. He heard a crowd of people laughing and he went to take a look. Thousands were listening to the stories of one man. He spoke with such wisdom, even the kids could understand. The hours passed so quickly, the day turned into night. Everyone was hungry, but there was no food in sight. The boy looked in his lunchbox at the little that he had. He wasn't sure what good it'd do. There were thousands to be fed, but he saw the twinkling eyes of Jesus, the kindness in his smile, and the boy cried out with the trust of a child. He said, "Take my 5 loaves and 2 fishes, do with it as you will. I surrender. Take my fears, my inhibitions, all my burdens, my ambitions. You can use it all to feed them all." I often think about that boy when I'm feeling small, and I worry that the work I do means nothing at all. But every single tear I cry is a diamond in his hand. Every door that slams in my face I will offer up in prayer. So I'll give you every breath that I have. Oh Lord, you can work miracles. All you need is my amen. So take my 5 loaves and 2 fishes, do with it as you will. I surrender. Take my fears, my inhibitions, all my burdens, my ambitions. You can use it all. I hope it's not too small. I trust in you. I trust in you. So take my 5 loaves and 2 fishes, do with it as you will. I surrender. Take my fears, my inhibitions, all my burdens, my ambitions. You can use it all. No gift is too small.
Mary, help of Christians, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good morning, educators. This is Tina de Guzman from Don Bosco Press, Inc. Welcome to SalesianaBooks Chalk Talk Online. SalesianaBooks Chalk Talk is a teacher training program that Don Bosco Press provides for its partner schools. Despite this pandemic, we continue to move forward and make the most of this challenging situation. That is why we are now bringing to you Chalk Talk and making it online. Thus, we now call it Chalk Talk Online. Today, Chalk Talk Online offers you another series that will help you face education in the new normal with confidence and smile. The first episode of Curriculum Design in the New Normal series is entitled Review of Curriculum Theories and Development within the Context of Online Learning. Curriculum is the main gear of teachers in education. And so I know that this morning is going to be another productive and enriching one. I will no longer keep you waiting. To formally welcome you and introduce our speaker, may I call in the Executive Director of Don Bosco Press Inc., Brother Carmelo Martinez, SDB.
Thank you, Miss Tina. Good morning to our dear participants to this Chalk Talk Online series in partnership with the Curriculum Studies Association of the Philippines. We thank CSAP for this wonderful collaboration between them and Don Bosco Press. Before we continue, it has been a tradition in the different Chalk Talk online sessions that we greet each other first through the chat box. And I can see that many are already sharing their morning greetings. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome. But other than that, we also ask ourselves every time we start a session, how are we feeling this morning? And so I'm starting a poll asking you how you are this morning. A, are you happy? B, are you sad? C, motivated, anxious, excited, or inspired? Okay, a good number of our participants are happy and excited. Around 30% are happy, 36% of our participants this morning are motivated. And we are happy to announce that no one is sad in this morning session. So we are all only either happy, motivated, anxious, excited, and inspired. Okay. Thank you for answering that poll. This is the first installment in a series of 5 sessions on curriculum design in the new normal. And so we are excited to begin this learning journey scheduled for 5 Saturdays starting today. Our topic for today covers the review of curriculum theories and development within the context of online learning. We know that many schools have already started their work. Some are in their in-service training for their faculty members. Others are offering bridging programs for their students or orientation to catch up on missed lessons. And others are in various stages of preparation for the start of the school year. And we realize that we are all finding our way in this new situation brought about by the pandemic. Hence, it is good to come together, to learn together, and to be able to share and discuss our concerns and our ideas together. We are lucky that we will be accompanied by an expert and experienced guide in this learning journey. We thank in advance Doc Ami for saying yes to our invitation to facilitate this 5-episode series on curriculum design in the new normal. We thank you too, our dear participants, for choosing to spend your morning with us. And if you find this session helpful, please share the news with your friends and colleagues. In connection with this, we are happy to announce that all the previous sessions of the different SalesianaBooks Chalk Talk online series organized by Don Bosco Press have already been uploaded in our YouTube channel. They are available for use, for download, for sharing. We will be very happy to know that we are able to contribute in providing you with reliable and relevant training and input for the betterment of our teachers, learners, and everyone involved in the formation of young people. I just have one last poll for you to answer. And it is asking you, how did you register to this event? Is it through CSAP or is it through the Bosco Press Facebook page or through the Salesiana account executive? Or are you a Salesiana book editorial team member as author or editor or through other means? Okay. We are happy for the support of CSAP. I think 36%, 37% of our participants this morning are coming from CSAP. Thank you so much for your presence and for your support. And then around 20% registered through the Bosco Press Facebook page. Then the rest are through our SalesianaBooks account executives and through the editorial team. And then there is also around 18% of our participants this morning who were registered through other means. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you so much and welcome to this first session of Curriculum Design in the New Normal. Pagpalain po tayo ng poong may kapal. Masaya po kami dito sa Don Bosco Press na makasama kayo ngayong umaga. Friends, it is also my duty and my privilege to introduce our speaker this morning. And for the rest of the upcoming session of this Chalk Talk online series on curriculum design. Our sessions will be facilitated by Dr. Amelia Clasara Fajardo, or Doc Ami, as we fondly call her. She is an associate professor at the College of Education of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Curriculum Studies and Teacher Education area. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Biology degree from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, as well as her Certificate in Science Teaching and her Master's degree in Education, also from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She finished her Doctor of Philosophy in Education, major in Curriculum and Instruction from Hiroshima University in Japan. A respected resource speaker, researcher, and trainer, Doc Ami has also published articles and presented papers in conferences and fora, both here and abroad, especially on topics that focus on education, curriculum, and instruction. She has also been an Erasmus Mundus Research Fellow and most recently, a Fulbright Senior Research Fellow. With these credentials and with her experience, I know that we're in good hands. And so, friends, let's welcome Dr. Amelia C. Fajardo.
Magandang umaga sa inyo lahat. Good morning. Thank you, Brother Melo, for inviting me to be part of your Chalk Talk series. So today, this is the first part of the series, 5 webinar series. This is the first one in the series, and it's all about the review of curriculum theories and curriculum development in the context of online teaching. So I want to start right now so we won't be wasting any minute or any time. So for today, I will be discussing about the definition of curriculum theory about instruction, what are some of the curriculum design models, instructional design models too, what are the bases from which we are developing the curriculum. We call it the foundations of curriculum studies. And lastly, we will try to identify the challenges during this time and how we can address this as we move on to online learning. Okay, so to start with, And these are two basic questions which my students and I would always talk about at the beginning of the class. We want to review our knowledge about curriculum and instruction. I don't like to believe that not one of you would not have a knowledge about curriculum and instruction, being a teacher and being a person who is in the education sector. Okay, so these are some. I'll share with you some of the basic definitions that I have gathered from literature. So, if you're wondering where curriculum comes from, it is derived from the Latin word correre, which is associated with the idea of running a race course. So, when you run a race course, you have certain goal. You're not just going around a race course without any purpose at all. Now, while instruction is derived from the late Middle English word instruction, meaning to provide structure and direction. Now, comparing this, the origin of these two concepts, it means that, well, the commonality that I can see is that they have both directions. Either one would have direction. There's goal, there's purpose for their existence. Okay, this is another, well, very quite familiar definition. Curriculum is what is taught in schools. Instruction is how curriculum is delivered. So it seems that they are the same. So, but I think the next definition would be an explanation and extension of this definition. So, this is what I learned when I was in the CPE program. When I decided to become a teacher, I went into CPE, and this is how it was defined then. Curriculum is basically what is taught, while instruction is how it is taught. So these definitions would seem to say that curriculum and instruction belong is one object, one end being the content or the what, and the other end being the how. Okay, so you cannot separate one from the other. The other definition here by Ms. Boss of Georgia University, she says that curriculum may be regarded as a program, it's a plan, sequence of courses, learning experiences, while the instruction suggests the methods, implementation, and presentation of what is in the curriculum. Okay, so it's almost parallel with the first definition. More words though. But the problem here is, so if you say curriculum is the what and instruction is the how, then how can the curriculum provide direction to the how? And where does the instruction gets its direction? So it seems that maybe this is the source of confusion. So many authors would even consider curriculum instruction to be the same. Okay, but that is not my definition because it created a lot of problem to me as I was working as a science education specialist in the UP Smith. We were supposed to develop a curriculum, but with so many definitions in the literature, I can figure out how it is, what is really in the curriculum, and how is it different from instruction. Are they the same? Are they related? These are some of the questions that were popping in my head. So if I do not have a clear definition of what a curriculum is, then how can I develop one? If I don't know what instruction is, then how can I design instruction, or how can I even plan for instruction? Okay. So during the course of my study for PhD, it has been my dilemma. So in the 3 years that I was pursuing my doctorate, I was able to craft my own definition of curriculum. For me, a curriculum is a plan with four elements. So these are the things that define what a curriculum is. So if you have a document and I give you a document and I ask you, is that a curriculum? Your answer should be based on what is in the document. So a curriculum, a document to be considered a curriculum should have learning intent, learning content, approach, and evaluation. So it is a plan. How about instruction? Now, to most of us, instruction would mean the act of teaching. But before you do the act of teaching, you plan for it. So for me, instruction is the plan. Or many people do not like to call it the lesson plan, but it's the lesson plan or instructional plan. Tertiary educators do not even want to call it a lesson plan because they don't like to develop a lesson plan. But whether it's written or not, there is a plan at the head, inside the head. And the plan would have the following elements too: the learning intent, topics, teaching strategies, and assessment. Looking at the definition of the elements in both curriculum and instruction, it would give the notion that they are one and the same. Well, I want you to know that they are not one and the same, but they are very much related as far as I'm concerned. Is there a relationship between curriculum and instruction? Definitely there is. But how are they related? Okay, I'll bring you to this puzzle. This is my very favorite analogy. Now look at the puzzle and I consider the entire puzzle to represent a program. So the puzzle is the curriculum representing a program. And each piece of the puzzle represents a course that comprise the program. So if it's a BS Geology program, there are courses that one has to take to be able to finish the BS Geology program. Okay? I also would like to think that a syllabus is also a curriculum only if it has the four elements. And in this case, we put it down small. It's not the program. Program having a course. Each course now in this particular slide, the puzzle represents a curriculum also, but this time this is the syllabus for a course. Okay? Previously, I said the entire puzzle is the curriculum for the BS Geology program. Each piece represents a course. So if we click one of these, it should also be a puzzle. So the syllabus is also a puzzle made up of different meetings. So a course has a curriculum as represented in the syllabus, and the syllabus would have pieces of this puzzle which represent the meeting. Okay? Now, are these, so just put it in your head. We will go back to it later on. Now, to understand that relationship, let us go to the dimensions of the curriculum. Let us put that context within. Let us put the relationship I presented in the puzzle within this context. So, according to the Teams report of 1984 published by Boston College, they mentioned about 3 dimensions of curriculum. These are intended, the implemented, and attained. So in the literature, usually the intended is also known as the covert, and this represents the plan, okay, with the four elements. Now, this is the basis for the implemented curriculum, which is actually composed of collective, it's a collection of all the instructional plan for a particular given, for a particular period of time, and it also represents the actual teaching. So this one, the implemented curriculum, when put together, all the instructional plan should be an approximation of the intended curriculum. They should be the same. They should be almost similar because the implemented curriculum is based on the intended curriculum. Now, there is a third dimension. It is called the Attain Curriculum. It is a misnomer because it has no elements, but it represents the percentage of how much of the intended curriculum has been achieved. So, for example, there are only 635, if you consider the dropout rate, no, if for every 100 students entering elementary, only 60%, no, I'm sorry. For example, the result of the set, I'm talking, sorry about that. Remember the set, the NEET. If the average score is 55%, it means that only 55% of the intended curriculum has been achieved. Okay? And also the result of the licensure exam. So the figure here, if compared with the intended curriculum, there is a gap. So if the score is only 55, that is low. There is a gap of 45. 45% of the intended curriculum has not been achieved. So this gap, no, it can be big, it can be small. If the gap is small, it means you have approximated the intended curriculum. So whether the gap is big or small, you always look at how it is implemented. So the culprit is here. And who are the people implementing the curriculum? It's the teacher. But before they do the implementation, they write the plan. The plan should be based on the intended curriculum. Okay? So now the next figure will tell you the relationship of curriculum and instruction. So curriculum is composed of several instruction put together, and it is almost the same. We derive it here. So this one directs the implemented curriculum. These are the instructional plan. So the next figure shows you the relationship. So in our case, I teach several courses, but one course should be taught in 48 meetings, 48 hours, I think. 48 hours. 18 weeks. So we make the syllabus and we plan for each week. But for each week, I also plan for the details of the lesson that I have to teach for that particular day. So I based my lesson, the meeting, on the syllabus. So, okay. This is another example. So if this is the curriculum, this is a more specific way of relating things. If this is the curriculum, you have the goals, the learning content, approaches, and evaluation. The goals will be the basis for determining the instructional objectives for lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3, or even lesson 4. It depends on the goal. So this means that every time you plan for a lesson, it is always drawn from the goals. It is always drawn from the curriculum. So another example will be the teaching strategy, how you are planning your lesson, what method should be used. This is always the basis for that. So the curriculum tells you what should be the environment in the classroom. So some curriculum would say it has to be activity centered. So if it's activity centered, you make sure that your teaching strategies would reflect the approach that has been identified in the curriculum. So the same thing with learning content and evaluation. There are other factors though. There can be the topic may not be directly related to here, but aside from the learning content from the curriculum, we also consider the instructional objectives that we need to achieve. Okay? So, if we define curriculum to have the four elements, this is how I define curriculum development. It is a decision-making process on the four elements of the curriculum and the organization of these elements. As simple as that. So, we have to decide on the learning intent, learning content, the approach, and the evaluation. Let's have a break for 5 minutes and maybe we can entertain some questions. Okay, before the break, we left from this slide, what is curriculum development, and this is how I defined it. It is simply a decision-making process on the four elements of the curriculum and the organization of these elements. Now, the question is, what are the things that we need to consider when we want to develop a curriculum? This would lead us to the foundations of curriculum studies. So in this slide, you can see a rectangle at the upper right hand most of the slide, and this represents the curriculum. And around the square or the rectangle, you can find four factors that affect curriculum development. So these are philosophy of education, sociocultural context, theories of learning, and demands of industries and profession. So let's go over each one. So every one of us, we have our own philosophy of education. So this is the spectrum from teacher-centered, focused on subject, to student-centered on the left side. So from here, we can find five isms, philosophies of education: perennialism, idealism, realism, experimentalism, and existentialism. Now, if every one of us have our own philosophy of education, each school would have its own philosophy of education as stated in their vision mission. Now, these are very important because it tells us the focus of what you believe in to be education is. So from here, student-centered, so most likely the role of the teacher would just be parity. Subject would be focused more on the subject matter. And then here, a little farther away, but right next to perennialism, it's also teacher-centered. But you talk about the ideal situation. So teachers also parrot. The realism, this is more on the law of nature. And if you move to the right, this is more on the student centered. So existentialism is very humanist. This is very student centered. This one is also known as social reconstructionist. The aim here, humanism aims to develop an individual to the fullest, but it stops there. While social reconstructionism develop the individual so that the individual can contribute to society. Okay? So I think UP is here. Humanism, pure humanism, but maybe some of our colleges would have this. When we did a study of the DepEd curriculum a decade ago, we realized that the philosophy of education of DepEd was basically humanistic development of the individual self, and without um, developing the desire for the individual to contribute to the society. And sometimes it explains a lot about the behavior of the Filipinos in the society. So we tend to focus on our individual self in times of pandemic, like what is happening right now. We focus more on our family, our needs. Basta sigurado kaming ligtas, okay na yung iba. And maybe that's also the reason why we have a little problem in combating the pandemic right now. But I think the current philosophy of education of DepEd is almost here. Okay, so I don't know if you know your own philosophy of education, but I have a tool which I can share with you as part of the handout. You can more or less see your preference. So you have to teach in a school with which you share with which you have the same philosophy of education. So Ateneo believes in man for others, so it's very socially constructionist. So you have to advocate that. So it's very important that you agree with the philosophy of education of the school, because teachers should emulate that philosophy in their way of teaching. Okay? And the basis for curriculum development is what the school believes in. It tells us the direction, what goal should be placed in the curriculum, how should the policy be when it comes to the use of different approaches appropriate to the philosophy of education of the school. Okay, the next factor, this is really about educational psychology, and it focuses on theories of learning. And there are three different different groups of theories: behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. So just to differentiate the three, behaviorism defines learning as a change in behavior. So if there are changes in the behavior before and after your teaching, then it means the student have learned something. So if you want to teach them how to swim and they are able to swim at the end of the session, then learning has taken place. And I think behaviorism, while some would not like to believe in it because it doesn't really explain how we learn, it just tells us, no, it tells us how we learn. Stimulus response is part of this. You provide the necessary stimulus to elicit the proper behavior and you reinforce it. So, and then it led to the development of the Bloom's taxonomy, defining all learning objectives as verbs, to start with the verb. And then cognitivism, this is also known as the information processing. It says that there is learning if the new knowledge is assimilated in the long-term memory. So it explains how we learn. We have the short-term and long-term memory. So when information gets into our system, to the different senses, it goes to the short-term memory. And our goal is to bring that short-term memory in the long-term memory for retrieval after so many months and even years. But the role of the teacher is to bring or facilitate the movement from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So we do advanced, we provide advanced organizers to the students so that they can easily identify to what part of the long-term memory should the new information be hooked to. Okay, then constructivism is the youngest among the theories, and it has become very popular. So we can say that according to this theory, we construct our own definition, we construct our own concept, we develop our concept through our senses, through our experiences. That's why it's called constructivism. So whether you teach someone or not, that individual can learn something. And in our system right now, we have the recognition of prior learning through the Philippine Educational PEP, Philippine Educational Recognition Test, Placement Test, Philippine Educational Placement Test. So those who drop out of the formal subsystem can take the examination because as we grow and experience our environment, we learn something, and perhaps that something is also equivalent to what the formal subsystem is looking for. So why do we study theories of learning? Because if we know how individuals learn, then we can design our classroom, we can identify approach which can lead us to effective realization, achievement of our objectives. So if you don't know certain theories, how can you create an effective environment in the classroom? So those who have no background or do not know something about theories of learning, and you are in the teaching profession, bato-bato sa lang, tamaan, huwag magagaling. Yung mga sa tertiary educators would always try to teach based on how they were taught and not really on theories of learning, although they are very good subject matter specialists. Okay, another thing that I would like to share would be the learning style, which is also part of educational psychology. While this is quite new, but they tried to debunk the idea that there is really a learning style. I would like to believe that we have our own learning preferences. So we have visual learners, auditory, and kinesthetic. I'm very visual. I have to see, I have to write, I have to draw, and I have to graphically represent lectures that I listen to. And visual learners are 80% of the population are visual learners. Auditory, they learn just by listening, so they can just tape the lecture and then they can listen to it while they're driving, while they're sleeping, or relaxing. Well, kinesthetic are those who learn with movement. So they have to um, put or to enlight, use highlighters when they highlight something learning. When you teach the children words with movements, 5% of them learn better kinesthetic. And they say computer is the best tool that addresses three learning style preferences. And this is also the basis why we need to have visuals, because 80% of our students learn better using some form of pictures, graphs, or illustrations. Okay, and then this is very important to know. So the reason why this was debunked, because I know in the United States they try to identify and label students to be visual learners. Well, I am visual, but I can also learn by listening, but it would take more effort for me to understand what I'm hearing rather than reading it. So given the environment, we can still learn. Okay. Another aspect under educational psychology, learners' nature and characteristics, and I will only present to you two dichotomy. Uh, the young learners and the adult learners. So we have a lot of studies about children, and depending on their growth, where they are, our way of teaching and approach would vary, even the objective, even the content or the topic. So we would always want to be socially relevant to the learners, to hold their attention and motivation. Now, if you are dealing with adult learners, what are effective for young learners may not be effective to adult learners. And according to Malcolm Norms, these are the basic characteristics of adult learners, and it is important for us to know. Adults need to know why they need to learn. So you cannot just stand in front and just talk and talk without you letting them know why they need to learn what you're sharing with them. Adults have self-concept of being responsible for their own lives. Adults come into educational activity with both greater amount and a different quality of experiences from youth. So in fact, if you're teaching adult learners like I do, I cannot assume that they don't know anything. There would always be a lively discussion of how it is when they are in the classroom teaching lawyers to be. So I have students who are lawyers, who are doctors. So we learn from them. Each of these professionals would learn differently and would have their own definition of what is relevant and important. And this one, adults become ready to learn those things that they need to learn. I don't know how to record this talk, but I need to. So I learn in 30 minutes how to operate the open broadcaster system because I need to learn it. So the motivation is the need to know. Adults are life-centered. If they learn something, if they know that this is very much part of their life, it can help them professionally and personally. So, and lastly, adults are intrinsically motivated. So grades may not be the reason for them to be motivated, because that's external, but more on the learning, how the lesson can improve themselves, how can the lesson help them in their life, professionally and personally. Okay, let's have a break. Okay, let us continue with the two other foundations, the sociocultural context and the demands of industries and professions. Now, we know that in the Philippines, we have very diverse communities and different subcultures, ethno-linguistics. We have a lot of languages. So what is true to one particular um, community may not be true to another community. And so that would create a lot of an issue on relevance of what is being learned in the classroom to what is happening in the outside world. Okay, an example would be the effect of having one curriculum to be implemented in the entire Philippines. So when I was a science education specialist and we did research on different communities, because we want to develop a curriculum that is based on the community. For elementary science, we know that children are learning things that are not relevant or not within the socio-cultural context of their community. So, for example, if it's science and you want to learn about animals in the community, the animals in a coastal area would be different from the animals in the mountainous area. So you cannot have one example, one textbook, one example for all, because some may not be familiar with the animals that are in the textbook or in the learning materials. So we were advocating for sociocultural context. So learning the same competency, same goals, but touching more on specific items or information that are true to their experience. So even English, for example, when A stands for apple, we don't have apples before. It's not grown in the Philippines. So why not use local fruits maybe, or local vegetable? I don't know. So when we are developing a curriculum, we want to know who are the end users. What is the social environment, cultural context? Well, I think TESDA has incorporated or has developed courses on Arabic language for students who plan to become overseas Filipino workers in Saudi Arabia. So they need to know how to perform their duties and obligations in an Islamic country. Now, the last is the demand of industry and profession, which is somehow related to the sociocultural context. Now, I place it here because even if only few of you are in higher education, and this is very important, you have to know what are the standards, what are the expected competencies of your graduates, expected competencies of industries of your graduates. So you have to have consultation with them. So when we are developing the curriculum in higher education, we need to look at certain standards and the current trends. Otherwise, your graduates will not be able to have the competencies to be able to work effectively in the chosen field. Okay, so as a result of the curriculum development process, um, we now have the curriculum. Now, maybe some of you would know that a curriculum is like a house. It is made up of, it has certain design, it has certain organization. So this is one particular concept that is quite interesting in the field of curriculum studies. So we call it the curriculum design. This refers to the organization of the elements that I mentioned, which are the four. So the organization, when they are organized, all curriculum would have a vertical organization and horizontal organization. Vertical organization will be within subject area from one level to the high. So for depth ed, you have reading from grades 1 to grade 12. That's the vertical organization. The horizontal organization will be what are the competencies binding this all together in one particular grade level. So what binds science, reading, and all the other subject area in one grade level. I know in depth ed there are particular themes per grade level, so that's the horizontal organization. Now, Print introduced the word architectonics. So when archi is the form, tectonics means movement. So this refers to the dynamic nature of the curriculum. So for him, a curriculum after the process doesn't mean there should be no movement. So we continuously work on the curriculum because we always have to address the issue of relevance and responsiveness of the curriculum. Okay, now based on the organization, these are some of the curriculum design that are common, familiar to us. We have the subject matter centered, and I think this is the oldest among the curriculum design, and until now we are following this in basic education. We have the same different subject matters in grades 1 to 6. And this is a vestige or the influence of the definition of curriculum being the subject. Curriculum is the what. So long time ago, when they developed the curriculum, they start with the topic, not, not the learning objectives. So there is a problem with that because you cannot justify why do you need to learn certain subject. Why? Why do I need to know this that there are this type of animals? If this question, the why question should have an answer. Now, discipline-based is very much related to subject matter centered. Grades 7 to 10 in the old curriculum is, is a transition. So I think 9 and 10 are discipline-based compared with the subject matter in elementary. So discipline-based focused on the knowledge and the process that are peculiar in a particular discipline or profession. So, and this is I think the one in grades senior high school are very much discipline based because this is the transition to higher education, which is discipline based. So the core, so that's where you acquire peculiar culture, knowledge, and processes being followed by an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, an architect, a writer, broadcaster. Okay, integrated curriculum is an answer to the limitations of the subject matter at discipline based because too much focus on the knowledge without knowing how one is related with the other. So in this world, we know now that everything is related to everything else. So there was an attempt to put together certain discipline and integrate them, put them together. So like we have the biophysics, biochemistry. MAPE was an example of an integrated curriculum. So actually, it has to be Philippine studies. Okay, see, student-centered curriculum design focus more on the approach rather than well, it also has an effect on the learning intent as an element, but this is the student centered would tell you that every element should be derived from what the students need to know, need to learn, and what are interesting to the students. The spiral curriculum talks about the arrangement of the element, particularly the learning intent, how it progressed or progressed from very simple to very complicated. But it's not you don't spiral the content, you spiral the competency. So from simplest competency to uh, more complicated competency. So it goes up along one axis. So that's the spiraling. Competency based talks about how the standards mm, are formed or are structured. So you talk about ability to do something. This is very much similar to OBE, the performance standards as defined by certain competencies that need to be developed. So the focus of this design would be the main core would be the learning intent. Problem-based curriculum um, is a form of an integrated curriculum. So you break the traditional arrangement, you know? Like in the College of Medicine, they have the OB-GYN, and gynae, the internist, diabetologist, cardiologist, etc., etc. So this came about because there are so many things to learn, but the problem is they only need few things to be able to the essential things to be able to function as a doctor in the particular specialization. So they try to identify medical problems around which they identify essential competency or knowledge from the traditional and they put them together. So example of this problem or themes would be cancer. So the basic of cancer, but cancer can occur in every part of the body. So when you deal with cancer, you need other expertise. So while you are studying to understand cancer per se, you need to get inputs from other field. You know? So how do you treat cancer if it's in the eye, if it's in the nose? So it's systemic. So I think the UP College of Medicine started with the PBL a decade ago, and all other major colleges of medicine followed, but only one remained successful, the Ateneo College of Medicine in Zamboanga. They are still using problem-based curriculum. What they did was to buy the entire curriculum from a foreign university and they had training of teachers. Okay, if this is the curriculum design, Then there is also instructional design. So what is the difference? The curriculum design is the overall thing. This one would be the specific events that you put in your class, in your lesson, based on a particular theory of learning. Okay, so there will be instructional events. So if your class is about 1 hour and 20 minutes, what would be the events that you follow? And these events are usually anchored on a particular theory of learning. Okay, is it related to the curriculum design? Definitely yes. So this is one design, the Madeline Hunter instructional design, and these are the instructional events. There are 7. So actually, when you consider an instructional event, all of the events have 3 major parts: introduction, the body, and the closure. So, but each design would have a different way of introducing the lesson, having the body, and having the closure. Modeling instructional design is very appropriate for normally for the subject centered and the discipline based. Spiraling also can sometimes use this in competency. So this is basically a behaviorist model. The next is Gagne. There are 9 steps. And what this is based on the cognitivist theory. Why? Because there is the stimulation of recall of prior learning, which is very important in cognitivism. So you try to identify where this new learning can be linked to in your uh, long-term memory. Okay, and the next is Dick and Racer instructional design. So this is actually very behaviorist. The 5 is this is appropriate for problem based. Okay, let me qualify something. So in curriculum design, for example, in science, in basic education, basic education grade 1 to 6 is subject matter, but within each subject you can reorganize or redesign the science curriculum to be student centered, to be problem based. Okay, it doesn't have to follow the traditional way. So there can be one major curriculum design and sub-curriculum design within a design. But it is not, so if that is the case, science is subject matter. But if the basic ed is subject matter. But if you want science to be problem based, then the type of design that you can use would be the 5 E's or the interactive approach. So it should reflect the nature of the curriculum design. Okay, let's have a break. Okay, welcome back. Now we have the last leg of my sharing will be, I hope, the highlight, the challenges. So there are a lot of challenges right now, but the effect of the COVID-19 is very strong on our mental and psychological being because of the economic conditions and uh, there are a lot of people who lost their job. The idea of things not being certain, the idea of uncertainty. We don't know what will happen next. We cannot even plan for our birthday, whatever. So it puts a lot of stress on us. But we want to become normal. We want to live normally. I think the Filipinos are very good at that because we are known to be resilient individuals. Okay, and then we have the limited or absence of face-to-face. Our curriculum is meant for residential, means it has to be taught face-to-face. Now, because we do not like to um, not face the challenge, no? Because there are a lot of means of of addressing the face-to-face, and they have defined it already. We will proceed with the school, but with using online learning. Now, in the webinar of Don Bosco, online learning has been defined already. So it's a subcategory of distance education. Uh, what is good right now, because we can still have face-to-face through the computer. So for me, you can have the remote learning, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous. And I'm happy we can still use the synchronous. With all of its limitation, it is better than nothing. Okay, now there are a lot of problems migrating from face-to-face to online learning. I'm not saying online self-learning. It is online learning. So there is still the teacher, you. This is not homeschooling too. I was telling my colleague who is in the audience now, when we redesign the curriculum, we have to consider the fact that it has to be the nearest possible way to face, because we are really meant to deliver the curriculum in a face-to-face mode. But because of what is happening right now, we need to simulate it. And I'm very thankful for the technology. So we can still meet our students, those who have the means to have the face-to-face. We can still, and the face-to-face, I mean the online synchronous mode. So when you design the curriculum, the question is, do you change it? Actually, not the entire curriculum. Sabi ko kay Father, Brother Melo, hindi naman babaguhin yung curriculum. Pareho pa rin yung goals. No? Kung binago ang goals, patay kasi the articulation. Maraming hindi matututunan, babaguhin mo lahat mula taas pababa pag binago mo yun. Kasi meron na tayong set validated program goals. So ano lang ang babaguhin? Yung approach, paano natin, how can we achieve the goals in this current context? Eh, ang sagot nila ay online learning. And that's the only possible way. Marami naman. Sa DepEd, yan ang malaking problema kasi marami tayong estudyante na walang abilidad. Paano natin sila? Yung walang internet, wala nga makain, may internet pa ba? Di wala. So, ang sagot nila ay radio. Pwede naman, no? Ang laking trabaho din yun sa teacher kasi gagawa ka ng script, kahit voice lang yun, paano mo ita-translate lahat yan into lessons. Yung, ano to, meron nung araw madaling araw yun, may mga lessons sa mga farmers. Sa radyo na ginagawa. Only about 30 minutes yung lesson. Very on specific topics. So, pwedeng gawing ganun. Ang sagot ko naman, meron tayong dalawang subsystem po, meron ng DepEd, formal and non-formal. So, pwedeng gamitin ang non-formal doon sa malalayong lugar na walang access to internet, to radio, TV. Pwedeng dalhin yun. Pwedeng dalhin ang mga modules. These are already available and it's ready, the non-formal education. Then after that, they can take the PEP. Umaasa ako na hindi naman tatagal itong panahon na to, no? Malakas ang aking pakiramdam at tiwala sa Panginoon na matatapos din yan. Pag natapos yun, balik na tayo sa face-to-face. So, walang na sayang. Ngayon, ano ba gagawin sa curriculum? So, hindi natin binabago ang program goals. Okay? Klaro po yun. Sabi ko kay Brother Melo, hindi po pwedeng baguhin ang program goals. Ang binabago lang natin ay ang delivery. Paano natin ma-achieve ang ating adhikain, mga learning objectives. So, eto ngayon yung challenge, no, sa atin. Ang focus ko ngayon dito, yung school preparation. Anong sagot natin dyan? Hindi nababago yung mga pinag-usapan natin kanina, elemento ng curriculum, hindi nababago. So, pag nag-design ka ng syllabus, ang nababago lang yung activity. Hindi nababago yung goal. Yung content, pwede, pero naangkla pa rin dun sa goal. Yung approach, yun ang dapat baguhin. Kasi hindi na nga face-to-face. Kailangan, ano pa ang pwede natin gawin other than online. So, ito na yung sagot Yung evaluation, dapat din mabago kasi nabago yung paraan mo ng pagtuturo. So, sa susunod na webinar, pag-uusapan natin yung more specific ways of how we can redesign the curriculum without actually jeopardizing the educational goals. Ito po ang nakakatakot kasi at the end of each grade level, merong specific goals that we need to meet per subject area. If these are not met, the students will not be able to go to the next level. There will be certain competencies that will be missed out. So, as much as possible, we don't play around with the goals. The MELCs that DepEd did, there was a question asked to me, what is my opinion about the MELCs? I said, I cannot give my opinion because I don't know how they were able to identify the essential learning competencies. However, if the process, if what they identified to be essential are really essential and will lead towards the goal, educational goal set by the curriculum, then there is no problem. I think the MELCs will be a better substitute, or it should be made permanent, because what we know, DepEd curriculum is very overloaded. So maybe this is the right time for us to deload by identifying only those that are essential. So I'm not saying MELC is bad or good. I'm just my question is, how did you do it? How were you able to? What are the criteria you used for determining the essential competencies? Okay? So, yung mga teachers na kinakabahan, hindi ho ako nagyayabang. Pero hindi ako nagpanik kasi sabi ko, pareho naman yung syllabus ko. Babaguhin ko lang dyan yung activities. activities that will help me achieve my objectives. Ang question dito, because we cannot do face-to-face, we cannot do laboratory, the we can postpone, we can reschedule the courses. So we can only offer courses that we can really do effectively, equally effective in through remote learning or online learning. So ipasapin tabi, pag-uusapan yun. Kaya yun po ang main core ng redesigning. Not really the change of the objectives or the goals. Kasi it will really jeopardize many competencies and the eventual learning of the students. So, ito po yung akin. Parang napakasimple. Simple lang po ako mag-isip. Ayokong dagdagan yung stress ninyo. Pero ganito lang po, nakatutok tayo dun sa approach. Kung pwedeng paiksiin, mas malalim, mas maganda. So I still believe in less is more than many things to cover. And I think that's the source of panic. The source of panic is related to readiness. Teachers are not ready to go online. They're talking about modules development. It's very tasking because you have to compensate for the loss, for the lack of face-to-face, especially the processing, limited time. Are students' readiness too? Are they ready? Ready with materials, ready psychologically. Siguro yung mga bata, enjoy sila kasi online. It is something new. Pero dun sa matatanda, sa mga estudyante ko, good luck na lang po kami. Hindi ko alam kung ready sila. Okay, facilities, eto po yun. So, pag nag-design kayo ng bagong approach o bagong pagtuturo, ito yung laging kino-consider natin. Do we have the infrastructure for it? What are the limitations? Yun po yun eh. Diba? Nababago ba ang prinsipyo for motivation? Hindi pa rin. Ganun pa rin po. So, what is applicable in face-to-face is still applicable on online learning with certain modifications. And the specifics of this we will deal with in the next and the succeeding webinars. So there are 4 more webinars and we will discuss more in details about these things that I'm talking to you. So I cannot talk about it all in one webinar. So we have to cut it in small chunks. And perhaps if you have certain things that you want to work on, then maybe you can use that as an example. And we can give our comments to your product, what you did. Okay po. So, I know there are questions that I will answer in a while. So, before I say goodbye, let me share with you this phrase which I like very much. Being simple is the most difficult thing in the world. It is the last effort of a genius. So, gawin lang po natin simple ang ating pagtuturo gagawin. The simpler, the better. More organized, more simple. Okay? And then lastly, I want to tell you how important you are as a teacher because we are touching the future. You teach, I teach. I touch the future, I teach. So this was said by Krista McCauley. Okay? Maraming pong salamat sa inyong pakikinig and I hope to see you next week.
All right. Hello again, educators. So that was a really field discussion and thorough discussion of the curriculum design and development. So it was as if we are taken back into the memory lane, because it's important as teachers to review the curriculum before we start our preparation in teaching. So at this point, we are now ready for the question and answer portion. So a few reminders. For your questions, you may type them anytime in the Q&A box beside the chat box. So we will accommodate as much questions as time permits. You also have a choice to ask a question in person, but you will have to indicate first in the chat box that you would like to ask the question in person. And then, if you are acknowledged, please accept the invite and unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. Microphones will remain on mute and video cameras turned off until given the opportunity to ask the question in person. All right, as we wait for Doc Amy to come in, you may now type in your questions in the Q&A box. All right, as we still wait for our speaker, just some recap of what uh, really struck me during the presentation of Doc Amy. It was good that Doc Amy highlighted that in this new normal, we are not really changing the curriculum itself, the goals. The educational goals are still the same, but then what we have to adjust is our approach or the delivery. So it's just that we do not go to school, we do not meet our students face to face. So we have to find other means on how to creatively present our how to present our goals and achieve them at the end of the day. So I believe that teachers as educators, we are born for it, and we know that we are really creative. We have different ideas so we can survive this new normal. All right. Uh-huh. So this is one of the things that we have to see and preempt in our online learning, the connection, the connectivity. So we shall address the technical issues and have plan B, plan D, and so many backup plans for us to really reach our goal at the end of the day. So you may still type all your questions in the Q&A box. Then we shall have time for Doc Amy to answer. All right. So we are going for Plan B with our Q&A with Doc Amy. Ayan, Doc Amy, say hi to our viewers.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for staying on, in spite of the difficulty in our internet connection. So we resorted to the Plan C. Wala
Plan
tamang
C.
recording yun. Kasi natatakot kami baka hindi nga ako tumuloy. Anyway.
Ayun nga, ma'am. I was telling them, Doc Amy, that in the new normal, we have to have our Plan A, Plan B, Plan C,
Plan
just
B and
like
Plan
this.
C.
Diba? Apa.
Yes.
So,
Plan A, plan. Meron lang akong gustong idagdag na hindi ko nasabi doon. Kasi yung pag pero uulitin ko rin doon sa susunod na webinar. Pag nag-iisip kayo nagde-design kayo ng lesson, kailangan yung isipin kung sino yung wala at meron. So, may plano kami, kunyari, synchronous din, pero i-record namin yun. No? Parang pwedeng balik-balikan at saka para dun sa mga hindi nakapasok during sa scheduled time, pwede niyang panoorin pa rin yung discussion. Tsaka gagawain kami ng script ng discussion na yun kung i-record. So, mas matrabaho ngayon ang remote compared dun sa face-to-face. Natatawa nga ako kasi sa face-to-face, halos yung iba sa higher education, papasok yun kahit hindi siya mag-prepare ng mga materials kasi nandyan naman yung teacher. Pero hindi pwede siya for remote learning, lalo na sa synchronous. Okay, thank you.
yes, ma'am. So, shall we start our question and answer portion? So, first, from Miss Everlida D. Jimenez, she's one of our authors. So, I would like to ask if there is a recommended curriculum and instructional design for this new normal or online learning based from what was previously presented.
Actually, I don't recommend anything. What you have right now can be okay kasi the curriculum that you're following is based on the philosophy of education of the school and it is based from the prescribed curriculum. So the way you interpret the intended curriculum is okay. So the most important thing would be the delivery. So doon lang po tayo. So if you are writing something, for example, and you would know that it would be used for remote learning, then there can be supplemental materials for some parts of your lesson to address the non-face-to-face situation, the inability to do face-to-face.
All right.
Okay.
Sige po. So, I hope that...
Yeah.
So, shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, from Miss Marie Gilda D. Rodolfo, will the assessment process be changed given the changes in the approach?
Oo, estudyante ko to eh. Will the assessment process be changed? Yung formative assessment, perhaps there can be more formative assessment in between compared to sa face-to-face. Kasi in the face-to-face, when you do the class face-to-face, you can do a lot of observation among your students. There can be more animated discussions that can give you more or less an assessment of whether what you are trying to impart to your students are achieved or have been absorbed by your students correctly. So, remember that the assessment process is still based on the objectives of the lesson or of that particular lesson. So, pwedeng, kung ang original mo ay paper and pencil test for the assessment, ano pa yung pwede other than paper and pencil examination? Considering the fact na hindi mo siya magagawa face-to-face. Kasi pag nag-remote ka ng paper pencil, baka iba yung sumagot. Okay? Pag nagbigay ka ng paper or essay, baka iba yung gumawa. Pwede siyang Google. Kahit naman din sa face-to-face. Pero may mga ganong pagkakataon na mangyayari. So, I hope I answered the question.
Yes.
The change will be dependent on the objective and the way you design the lesson. We need to divide it into small chunks. So, kung formative siya, dapat mas marami. Kung summative, kailangan siyang directly attached to the learning outcomes ng unit or ng lesson.
Okay.
I think that's it. Okay.
Thank
Wala
you,
na.
Doc. That I think we will be having future sessions on, and part of which is the assessment, right, Doc?
Yes,
In the next webinar. So we'll be
yes.
touching more of assessment in the next Chalk Talk Online. All right, another question from Sir Eduardo N. Sanchez Jr. Doc,
Mm,
usually any change in approach entails a new learning curve. So
mm,
accomplishing a goal takes longer. So for this
yes.
school year, is the volume of curricular goals for basic ed still achievable?
Uh, I I think the reason why they reduce the number of learning and reduce it to the basic essential, yun yung milk eh. The milk is
Yes.
reduced already to accommodate the number of days that have been cut away from cut cut away from the original number of days to implement the curriculum. Ngayon, iniksian kasi magsa-start ng August. So, tinanggal nila yung hindi essential. Iniwan nila yung essential. So, I hope the essential is really essential to be accommodated and be taught effectively in the reduced number of time or period for it to be taught inside the classroom. So, ganun din sa higher, without actually compromising the achievement of the program goals. Kaya kailangan i-identify mo yung essential. And that's also what we're doing. We are redesigning, cutting some of the lessons in our courses, but not really to the extent that we are changing the course outcomes. The course outcomes are non-negotiable, but the lesson objectives can be reduced to fit into the number of weeks. Kasi from 18, naging 13 na lang ata kami. So, merong 5 weeks na nawala. Yun po.
Ayun po. So, the course goals are non-negotiable. So, as long as we meet our course goals,
Course goals.
yeah, that's it. All right. Thank you, ma'am. So, we move on to the next question. Simon Peter, from Sir Simon Peter Gana. In the new normal, instructional plans are somehow simplified since teachers will not be visible as much as they were before. However, will this help the parents facilitate learning to their children effectively, especially those who have less access to technology?
Okay. Uh, Whether it is face-to-face or online, it has been our advocacy to elicit the help of the parents. No? So we want the school to be an extension of the house. So dapat may partnership na yun. I think even in the residential or the face-to-face mode. Ang problema lang doon, let us also consider families with busy parents. Second, families where the parents are not educated. So, paano mo sila i-engage? Yun yung actually problema doon sa ibang mag-homeschool ako. Paano ko yung nanay ko hindi rin naman marunong? Paano ko tuturuan? Bato-bato sa langit ang tamaan, huwag magagalit. Pero that's a reality, di ba? Yung mga anak nag-aaral, yung mga tatay, ayaw nila yung mga anak nila magaya sa kanila. Ang nanay din, parang gano'n. So, yung sinabi ni Sir Simon kanina na simplified. So, anong ibig sabihin ng simplified? What does simplified mean? Opo. So, simplified in what way? Less activity. So, hindi ko siya ma-visualize how simple it is. Parang with sinasabi ko kasi ngayon when you do instructional designing for the new normal, maraming activities kasi you have to divide the lesson in small chunks na hindi naman normally ginagawa pag sa face-to-face, no? Hindi naman siya ganun ka chunks talaga siya. Ito chunk mo talaga. So, kung ibig sabihin ng simple ay konti ang chunks, pwede akong maninervyos kasi baka ganun siya kasimple na yung iba kasi solid philosophy of education nila reflected din sa instructional plan nila yun. So, kung ikaw isang teacher na alam mo, the best way for you to teach is just to give the materials, okay, reading, basahin mo yan, ito, sagutan niyo yung questions, tapos na. So, hindi ibig sabihin na sagutan niya yung tanong, natuto siya. Kasi walang processing ang nangyari. Yung intervention ng teacher. That's why for me, teachers are very important. They cannot be out of the scene. And that has been the worry before, no? Meaning more than a decade ago when technology started creeping in and we started using certain technology in the classroom, may dissection na for citation, blah, blah, blah. And mga teachers, no, sabi, naku, papalitan na kami ng computer. Hindi pwede kasi ang computer hindi marunong mag-process ng learning situation. So yun yung part na medyo mahirap kapag nasa remote learning. Kailangan meron kang one-on-one discussion, consultation with your students, asynchronous or synchronous. Kasi sa klase, ang processing mo is the entire class. May individual questions, naririnig ng iba, there can be student interaction na pwedeng limited in the remote learning asynchronous. So, I hope I answered the question. But that can be tackled more when I think that's webinar 3.
Yes. Okay.
We'll talk about more specific about the approaches and teaching strategies.
Okay, ma'am. So, shall we move on to the next question?
Oh, meron pa?
Yes po. They're really into the discussion today, ma'am. So, from Elaine Zedric Camiling. So, good morning, Doc Amy. Schools have modified their syllabi curricula for the new normal. Most have compressed the delivery vis-a-vis a modular approach from 14-week to 7-week, at least for the institutions I currently work with. So, half.
14 to 7, kalahati. Okay.
Do you think
Nervous naman ako.
Do you think this has an effect on the quality of learning of our students? Context is there are practical courses, production and management, which form part of arts degrees.
Okay. Depende sa course, no? Kasi may mga course, depende sa curriculum design. May mga courses na the competencies are better developed by practice. So when you say doing the act, doing the procedure, you do it better through practice. So pag nagdo-drawing ka, si Alain kasi art teacher yan. So pag nagdo-drawing ka, pag mas maraming oras na mag-practice, mas maganda, di ba? Pero kunyari, ang topic mo conceptual, theory, katulad ng ginagawa ako ngayon, i-reduce mo man yan, they can read about it. So pag yung 14, ginawa mong 7, but it's all about concept. Ang daming supplemental materials to help them understand, to help them explain, to help them digest. Pero, pag ang course mo, more on the procedure, no? Yung the act of doing, the practical side. Pag i-reduce mo siya sa 7, mako-compromise yun kasi yung number of hours dedicated. Kasi lahat ng skills mayroong minimum number of hours before you can competently develop it. So yun yung effect doon, marireduce siya. So case-to-case basis pa rin. So hindi ko alam paano i-reduce from 14 to 7, ano yung binawan. So kung definitely may mako-compromise, kung hindi tinignan yung overall picture. Your course is just one of the courses in the program. And sometimes if your course is a prerequisite to higher and more advanced courses, and you fail to develop or include the essential competency, which is a prerequisite to the higher courses, then the learning of the students is compromised. So when you do the reduction, it has to be collective as a whole, looking at the entire picture of the curriculum for the program. So hindi ka lang basta-basta nagbibigay. Oh, I hope I answered the question.
Ayun po very, very crucial po kasi talagang kung babawasan, we have to consider pa rin that we have to not to uh, make the learning goals or the course goals suffer, no?
Oo.
Ayun po.
Yun pa rin kaya ako
Talagang doon
sinabi
tayo
na
babalik.
negotiable,
Yes.
yung course
Yes.
outcome.
All right, Doc Amy, I
Okay.
think you have said something about this, but maybe we could still answer from Sir Jefferson M. Frias. What can you say about the intended curriculum that DepEd has made for this new normal? This is regarding again the MELCs.
Ayun, I think I mentioned that already. If the criteria are very clear, and I think if the criteria used are very clear and reasonable or valid, then the MELC can be a very good intended curriculum. And I think, sabi ko nga, it could be the permanent one kasi less nakafocus ka dun sa essential, which we have been clamoring long time ago when we were evaluating the curriculum to be overloaded. I think this is to everyone's knowledge that the DepEd curriculum is really overloaded. We need to cut down some of the non-essential learning outcomes and make it more focused. We were telling before, not only to DepEd, but some of the education people that less is more. Nakatuto ka talaga.
Less is more. All right.
Less is more.
Sige pa. We shall be answering last question from Sir Alfredo A. Lozanta. So, hello po, Doc Amy. Is the recording of synchronous lessons would not violate any data privacy policies since students may be part of the recorded synchronous lesson?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a very good question, and I need to ask that doon sa aming kinauukulan sa UP yung data privacy.
Mm-mm.
Pero it is only for our use sa classroom, and there's an agreement among the members of the class. So, the first thing I would do in the class, syempre, I would want to know if everybody can have access to internet during the synchronous meeting. If not, then I will ask the permission to record it. Their permission, if it can be recorded, so they can, if they will be absent the next meeting, then we can record and they can just view it. Then once everyone has viewed it, then we can delete the file. There are certain measures that we can talk about. So about doon naman sa private, hindi ko naman gagawin yan kung walang permiso dun sa mga taong kasama dun sa video. Kailangan ko talagang tanungin kung okay sa kanila o hindi. I think yung iba, mahirap gawin ng synchronous meeting sa undergraduate. Kasi marami talaga tayong undergraduate students who do not have access to internet. Wala silang personal laptop. So, yung kanilang scheduled meeting, for consultation lang siya. Hindi siya for klase. So, may asynchronous assignment na ginagawa. So, yun yung isang model. Sa akin, gusto ko combination of asynchronous and synchronous. I have my own reasons for doing that. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So, before we end, ma'am, Doc Amy, may we have final words before we end this first episode of the curriculum development in the new normal?
Okay, maraming salamat at sa pagdalo ninyo. Kaya nagpapaumanhin din ako kasi hindi niyo ako nakita. Nag-makeup pa naman ako ngayon para doon. Kaya kami may plan A, B, C. Yung B sana, boses ko lang, and then PowerPoint, hindi rin ako makapasok. So, ginawa namin, nirecord ko talaga kasi nung nire-record ko yan, stressful sa akin kasi hindi ako marunong mag-record at hindi ako marunong humarap sa camera. Naku-conscious ako kasi hindi ako telegenic. Sabi ko, ang hirap pala maging artista. Yun yung aking, nire-record ko yun midnight ng Wednesday ng gabi hanggang alauna ng madaling araw. And I learned how to use OBS, yung Open Broadcaster, broadcasting software in 30 minutes. So, yan po yung outcome ng aking 30-minute session sa YouTube. Nakakatakot, yes, pero ako matanda ako, natutunan kong gawin kasi meron tayong desire and sense of commitment to our students. So, let's face the challenge the simplest way. Huwag na nating unahan ng kaba kasi pag kinabahan ka, wala ka na pwedeng gawin. So, kalma lang tayo, isipin natin, and as much as possible, kung meron kayong mga kaibigan ng collective nyo gagawin, no? Tulungan kayo paano ang gagawin. Kasi yung isa alam niya to, yung isa alam niya yan. So, you put your resources together, talents together. So, wala pong imposible. And magagamit niyo rin yan kapag kayo'y nag-face-to-face na. So, yung nakikita kong new normal, pag bumalik na tayo sa face-to-face, is the blended learning, which has been advocated for so many years now. Yung use of different modality and technology other than face-to-face. So I hope to see everyone next week. Next week we will talk about curriculum mapping, which is a tool for alignment and evaluation, which is very important when you do the reduction of learning objectives without compromising the course outcomes and program outcomes. So if you have your syllabus next, you can bring them with you, and maybe we can talk about it, or you can use it as an example when you go over the steps that I will be sharing with you next week. Tapos ano pa ba? Hopefully by next week, meron na po akong bagong internet provider, so we can see each other face to face. So maraming salamat po sa inyo, and enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe, and God bless.
All right. Thank you, Doc Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, so we thank Doc Amy again for sharing her expertise with us today, and we thank everyone who joined us and bear with us with all the technical issues that we have faced this morning. So please do look out for our other Chalk Talk online sessions. If you have already visited our Facebook page and liked them, I know that you are aware of the other series that we had. And next week, we'll be ending 2 of our series. So I hope you don't miss that out. On August 12, that's a Wednesday, is the last episode of our UPOU remote teaching and learning series. So please attend. And then on August 14, 2020, Friday, also the last episode of our Christ Evangelization and Faith series, Prayer, Life, and Accompaniment. And then next week, a Saturday, would be the second episode of the curriculum development in the new normal. As what Doc Amy has said, we are going to talk about ensuring alignment of intended curriculum through curriculum mapping. So please, again, visit our Facebook page for more updates. You just have to look for Don Bosco Press Inc. And of course, you may also contact your SalesianaBooks account executives to ensure your slots. Other reminders, for those who have registered for today's Chalk Talk Online, you shall be receiving your digital certificates in 2 weeks' time through your emails. Then you will also be having a recording of today's session. Also, we would like to ask you to accomplish the evaluation survey at the end of this session to help us serve you better. Another reminder regarding the handout for today's session, it shall be given out to you by next week. So please watch out for next week's episode. So again, thank you for joining us today at SalesianaBooks Chalk Talk Online. We hope to see you again in our upcoming sessions. This is Tina de Guzman, thanking you, and until next time.
quality education through quality textbooks.